I've got nothing. I, I've got nothing to justify my opinion on this one. This is probably the most thought-provoking film I've ever seen in my life. At least in a very visceral way. And this is coming from a guy who's seen pretty much every Stanley Kubrick movie. I mean, this is something. Well, if you're too lazy to check out the title of this video, this movie I'm talking about is Francis Ford Coppola's most bizarre film, Apocalypse Now. Seriously, how do I sum this one up? It's such a bizarre film. With that said, though, there is a plot that can be made out of it that at first is pretty straightforward before it becomes absolutely confusing and muddled towards the end. So, let's see if I can give you the lowdown. The main character of the film is Captain Benjamin Willard, played by Martin Sheen, in what I'm quite sure is his first ever leading film role. I don't know, I may be wrong. My knowledge on this one's pretty flimsy. Basically, Willard has been sent on a secret mission to terminate with extreme prejudice the supposedly renegade and criminally insane Colonel Walter Kurtz, played by Marlon Brando, who has formed some sort of cult following in the jungles of Cambodia, away from the turmoil of the Vietnam War, which is the basic setting backdrop for this entire story. And the film is basically Sheen's journey upstream trying to find this location whilst disappearing further and further into rather bizarre thoughts and borderline insanity, which he experiences also in the faces of the team members that come along with him. That's the best way I can explain this, and I'm not even entirely sure if this is right. This is such a strange piece of work. I don't know how many times I can say this anymore without annoying you all, but I don't know what else I can really say. Well, let me try looking at some things that I particularly thought were interesting with this film. Well, for one thing, this film has got great atmosphere. I mean, very good atmosphere. It's also paced unbelievably well, too, but the setting, this is not a very conventional Vietnam War setting. It doesn't even treat it like it's a war. It treats it more like it's just some realm of insanity, and certainly it kind of makes sense when you consider what some people might have had to go through in this place, and apparently some of Martin Sheen's antics in this film aren't even acting, including the iconic punching of the mirror. So, yeah, there's a very effectively suicidally depressing mood in many places, and that atmosphere is very well brought to life with the very creepy musical score that Carmine Coppola wrote for this film, as well as the very effective use of location shooting throughout the Philippines to convey Vietnam. And on the subject of the pacing, this is one of the most perfectly paced movies I've ever seen, in fact. Every scene just flows at such a perfect pace. Nothing feels too rushed or too plodding except for maybe towards the end, and even then, I can argue that they are well paced too, because technically speaking, it's supposed to feel that way, I think, for when Marlon Brando's character finally shows up at the 1 hour 40 minute mark out of 2 hours 20 minutes. So, yeah, from a technical standpoint, this is a very effective movie and really takes advantage of it, which is quite something considering as the production schedule was very famously torturous. Many actors went through difficult situations, including Martin Sheen getting a heart attack, Marlon Brando going through a serious obesity period, and Francis Ford Coppola, who directed and wrote the film, apparently being stoned half the time. And apparently it took about 2 years to do the entire shooting. That is quite something. And it makes it all the more rewarding when the film ends up being this good in spite of such a troubled background. I think it's safe to say I'm very impressed with this work. The suspense. Wow, the suspense. To say nothing of the fact that by the time the last third arrives, honestly, I had no idea what to think. I mean, for those of you who haven't seen the film, I won't ruin it all, but let's just say it's one of the most... Look at me, this has confused me so much I'm even at a loss for words. Well, the best way I can sum it up, it's the closest thing to a fever dream, I think, that any film can convey, that last third. Especially seeing as Marlon Brando's face is almost never visible. It's always half hidden in shadow, and of course that's one of the many iconic images of the film. That, the mirror punching, the attacking of the Vietnam village to the tune of Ride of the Valkyries, Robert Duvall's famous line when he's rousing the soldiers for battle. And that's just one slice of his great moment of screen time, which is very, very brief, but very effective. So, this film has been very culturally influential. I mean, obviously, it's in a lot of works of culture that have followed, but there's a reason. It was very groundbreaking as far as how it could affect the mind. I mean, Stanley Kubrick, David Lynch, Ingmar Bergman, they'd done this stuff before, but this was in a very different league of that type of mentally provoking films. So, I can't even put my finger on what it exactly is. But it's definitely an experience I've never had before watching a movie. Well, obviously this isn't enough to persuade you guys to watch it, but I insist that any of you who have not seen this film must see this film. Though, caution, this is not for people who just expect movies to be basic entertainment. On the whole, this is just a bizarre piece of work. If you want to get the full backstory on the bizarre and torturous stuff that was going on behind the scenes during the making of this film, see the documentary Hearts of Darkness, a filmmaker's apocalypse. But if you're curious about the resulting product, you'll probably be impressed. It's well acted, well paced, the atmosphere is great, the soundtrack is so effective, and it just makes it all the more rewarding when something with that troubled backstory has this successful a result to go with it. So, yep, this gets the distinctive rating of an ultimate recommendation for me. Even if this doesn't end up being the kind of movie you'd want to watch regularly, and probably it won't, definitely give this a shot. It's worth your time, though, again, it's not for those who are of sensitive mind. Especially the last 5 minutes. This is still a 5 out of 5 for me, but... damn. Thank you for your time.